I don't think AI is for me. I just don't like it within my business. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say there's one metric that we're really obsessed about, and that's like time to value. So if you're evaluating any AI tool, measured by how many minutes do I have to invest in this, plugging this thing in and playing around with it until I see the first very measurable ROIs.
Having a blast, gonna get it on the Bruce Lee podcast. Bruce Lee like Bruce Lee, cause it's so hard and the T is loose leaf. Making up those rhymes, don't write it, just do it loosely. If you want my respect, you better put direct. Here are the words in the podcast, that's what comes next.
Welcome back to the Boostly podcast. This is the podcast that gives you, the listener, the tools, the tactics, the training, and most importantly, the confidence so you can go out there and get yourselves direct bookings. I love to do a mini series on this podcast where we talk to services and businesses that you need to know about as a operator, as a host. And today we're talking about AI. I know AI is buzzing in the communities and we get to see it on the Facebook groups and things like that. Today, we're diving in with a co-founder of an awesome business that you need to know about, something which is going to be awesome, especially for 2024. So let me welcome along. We've got Sam Dundas, and as I say, he's the co-founder. The company itself is called Besty AI, and we're going to dive into all their services. We're going to talk about AI, and you're going to get some good value on this podcast. Welcome along, Sam. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sam, can you give an elevator pitch? What is Bestie AI?
Yeah, so at the core, we're a guest communications app, plugs in directly with any of your property management systems, and then gives any operator the option of turning AI on autopilot. So anytime a guest message comes in, have Bestie automatically respond based off everything it knows about that listing. So past conversations, saved replies, amenities, descriptions, and then give instant answers to guests in your tone without you having to do anything. And on the other end, we give hosts the option to have some controls. So instead of it going off and just taking the keys and handling guest conversations, you can just draft messages directly in your PMS inbox without having to add another app or another third-party inbox, all directly within your PMS, just to speed up the communication process. And then that's the guest communication side. And then we built an entire suite of operating tools. As using AI as the foundation, we'll do things like generate extra bookings for gap nights, monetize early check-in, late checkout, and all of those quick wins that you may do manually right now, all powered with these large language models, where you just kind of set it and forget it and let it that's a good.
So I know a lot of AI businesses are quite new in general, but can you talk us through why did you decide to solve this problem for the industry and the history of the business?
Yeah, so we're pretty new. So I've a little bit of backstory. I've been a property manager myself for about 2 years. Most like similar to most people, started with a few, met a few people along the way and started managing their properties. So I have a portfolio of 35 properties across, funny enough, Germany, randomly, which is a whole other story, and then in Canada. And my co-founder and I, we actually worked at a different AI startup before in the e-commerce space, working with big brands like Peloton and helping them optimize the product photos that they use to sell online. Obviously, photos are a big part of the buying journey. And so we were leveraging a lot of the same AI that people are using in this industry, but for e-commerce. And then about 6 months ago, as my property management business was growing, we found that there was a huge opportunity to apply the same kind of AI into the STR space. So basically in August, we decided to pivot businesses completely. In the first month, we signed up about 2,000 listings around the world, just with a really scrappy early version of the product. And then we've been working closely with them. You know, our average user has anywhere between 50 to 150 properties. So really targeting the professional users. But of course, we have users that have 5 to 15 to 20 as well. And that's kind of what dovetailed into that. So we're about 6 months into the business now, just over 10,000 listings on the platform. And they're all using it for a variety of use cases, like I said, either the guest messaging front or on just the operations. Because some people say, you know, AI is great, but I'm all set, high touch communications I want to do with humans. But then there's a lot of quick wins they can do leveraging our automations. Some things that you wish were just in your PMS, but they're not. And that's where we kind of do them for you.
One of the questions is, what AI can I put in my business? How can I save myself time or save myself potentially my first hire? And AI is a great way that everybody listening to this right now should be thinking, well, am I implementing AI into my business currently? If not, then how am I best to do that? And of course, this is what your product solves. So at the moment, when it comes down to how it helps hosts, obviously, I know we've touched on a lot. So what does a host physically have to do? How much work is involved in kind of onboarding and that side of things?
Yeah, so a core tenet to our business is that there's so much information provided through the property management system, through their pretty robust APIs, that our whole goal is that you can just get signed up in like 1 minute. So the traditional hook up your API key, and then what happens is our system will go through each listing and generate a knowledge base. So it basically gets up to speed really quickly with all of your listings, all of your communications, your tone, everything you can think of, that if you were to just hand your PMS to a person and tell them, learn everything about my operation, that's what we do on the back end. And then, if you have 200 or 300 listings, it can take up to 24 hours to first sync up. You get an email and say you're off to the races, and then you go in and start adding some of the automations that we have. And I can dive into a bit more of those features. But the best way of thinking about us is that you have two buckets. One bucket is all the things you're currently doing that are really time consuming. So guest messaging, updating listings, like things that you do all the time that just take a lot of human interaction. And then all the things that you're just not doing because they're cost prohibitive. So, we've built a lot of our automations around things that would just be way too much time. Like you're not going to get a staff member to go into your calendar every day and check the availability and play Tetris with your listings if you have multi-type listings, and which ones should go where, and should I send offers to these guests, and which ones want to check in early, things like that. So there's this whole other category of things that now you can leverage these large language models to do a lot of that heavy lifting. It unlocks a whole suite of new things that you're just not doing because you just don't have the time, or it's too repetitive, or it's too inconsistent. So that's kind of the two things, generally speaking, but I'd love to dive in, really specifically to some of those things, because I do think there's this part in the industry where everybody rolls their eyes when they hear AI. At this point, it was really exciting, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening and innovation, but when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, like what can I actually do? And so I'd be happy to chat more about some of this.
What would you say to the people who have had a kind of experience where they go, do you know what, I don't think AI is for me. I just don't like it within my business. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say there's one metric that we're really obsessed about, and that's like time to value. So if you're evaluating any AI tool, measured by how many minutes do I have to invest in this, plugging this thing in and playing around with it until I see the first very measurable ROI. So whether that's guest communications, is how fast am I starting to get those messages written up for me? Are they good? It's one thing to generate them, but you can see AI hallucinate. So how good are they? How fast does it take for this thing to generate me an extra booking? And so our core metric is time to value. And so I would just recommend anybody who's had maybe a negative experience or something, if you give us just like 10 minutes, 2 minutes to sign up and then 8 minutes to just chat through the platform, then we're pretty adamant that you're going to see really quick quick wins that will elevate your business in a bunch of different ways.
Talk us through some of these features that you've mentioned. Talk us through how they work.
Yeah, so the one we're most excited about, which I think makes us a lot different than I think this large wave of AI communication apps, which seem to be like the low-hanging fruit, kind of obvious use case for AI. A big thing that's happening in other industries that's starting to come into the short-term rental space is that because these property management systems already, everyone knows they connect through APIs, and there's all these things happening in the back end. Even myself, we don't really fully understand the extent of how everything works. We just know if we plug this in, it'll talk to each other. My Breezeway is talking to my PMS, or my Price Labs is talking to my calendar, but they just do something in the back end. So the one thing that we're really most excited about is Copilot. So the idea with Copilot is that we've trained a GPT model, so just ChatGPT, and then hooked it up to all of those API points in your property management system. So what you can do is, instead of going into, let's say you want to change a cleaning fee on 50 listings, the current solution is go into the PMS, click on a listing, go through all the fees, add it, adjust it, whatever. You'll just be able to talk to our chatbot internally, our Copilot chatbot, and say, hey, for all of my listings in Los Angeles, please adjust the cleaning fee to $200. It's going to run, it's going to actually write code to the API, complete the task, and then send you a message saying, hey, that's done. So that's a really simple example, but we can go kind of off the deep end of some of the crazy stuff that it can do. And we think that, generally speaking, when I talk to a lot of property managers and they think, how can I, for example, booking direct is a huge term for people to get that extra margin on direct bookings and build a better direct relationship. We're talking about like marginal improvements, like between getting a bit of extra money on bookings. But I think like the most exciting thing in the industry right now is that when you start connecting these really intelligent large language models directly to your behind the scenes PMS API, you're going to be able to talk to it to do anything, whether it's changing cleaning fees, whether it's writing listing descriptions. Well, hey, Airbnb came out with a new amenity. Looks like you have this, but you didn't think to click it on. We're going to find that. We're going to click it off for you, or, updating titles. So there's a lot of things anything you can do directly to the PMS, you'll be able to do basically by talking to a chatbot. So that's our core foundational feature that I think makes us much different. But I can speak to some of the other stuff that we have on the go as well.
Having a blast, gonna get it on the Boostly podcast. Boostly like Bruce Lee, cause it's so hard and the T is loose leaf. Making up those rhymes, don't write it, just do it loosely.